Welcome back, Senior Devs. Sean Cannon here. In this lesson, we're going to talk about extrinsic values. These are essentially the projected forms of your intrinsic values. They are perceived by your peers differently than how you personally perceive them. For example, your intrinsic value integrity can be projected as honesty or trustworthiness, which we'll cover in a little bit. The first extrinsic value I want to cover is reliability, because it encompasses all four of the intrinsic values we covered. Clients and employers rely on us to build their systems for them. They rely on us to do what is asked of us and not to implement breaking changes because we're lazy or prefer some other library that doesn't work well with the existing codebase. As someone who manages dev teams, I can assure you that reliable devs are much more valuable than rockstar devs. If you are able to consistently deliver tickets on time that work as they're expected to, the product team and engineering managers will want to put you in charge of other devs and give you promotions. Let me be crystal clear. Devs care about the quality of the code, clients care about the features and profits. If the code isn't perfect but the feature works, simply create a ticket to track any technical debt so you can clean up the code later and deliver the feature. The code of course still has to work and not introduce any side effects or regressions, but if you need to meet a tight deadline, try and implement shims, like returning some static JSON in an API response instead of third-party service integration, for example. There are definitely ways to improve your reliability as a dev. Probably the most obvious way is to keep your sprint commitments as light as possible, meaning don't say yes to owning a ticket if you're not 100% certain you have the bandwidth to deliver it, or you risk both burning out and pissing off the product team. Another way to improve your reliability is to leverage iterative development versus waterfall development. Try to code every feature with a minimum viable product mindset so you can deliver the user experience before delivering the final infrastructure. Eventually, as you get better, you will start to be able to deliver your best code the first time, which won't introduce any technical debt, because you'll learn to spot patterns early on in the grooming process, which we'll cover deeper in a later module. The next extrinsic value on the list is trustworthiness. This is more of an interpersonal relationship trait, but more often than not, you'll be exposed to things that one colleague doesn't want another colleague to know. Maybe a colleague tells you that they're looking for another job. You need to keep that information to yourself, because it's not your place to share it with anybody else. The same goes for any sort of corporate gossip, where people share opinions of other team members and maybe their overall feelings about the project. Sometimes people just need to vent, and why not? We all get stressed from time to time. You don't need to participate in the gossip to be a good listener, and your colleagues will really appreciate someone that they can confide in who won't go behind their back with anything they tell you. Trustworthiness also carries over to security access, credentials, passwords, customer information, and other sensitive data in the system. We've touched on this a little bit in the intrinsic values module when we talked about ethics, and this is where that ties in. That said, you can be the most ethical developer in the world, but if you're forgetful, careless, or clumsy, then SecOps is not going to trust you with production database access, for example, because they're essentially extending their accountability to you, and they need to know that you're not going to set them up for failure by causing a data leak. The last extrinsic value I want to cover in this module is altruism, which is really another way of saying put the well-being of your team before your own. I realize that might sound contradictory since you're taking a course on how to surpass your colleagues on the career ladder, but hear me out. When you are on a team, you can't succeed unless your team succeeds. You need to identify the weakest links on the team and help them succeed in order for you to succeed. This becomes especially important when you are responsible for your team. For example, when you get put into a leadership position like principal dev or tech lead. When you are constantly helping your fellow devs solve problems and deliver code, you will become the dev that everybody comes to for help. Your name will be mentioned over and over again in meetings and reports, and you will gain a reputation for being an irreplaceable asset in the organization. For example, in our daily Scrum calls, it's extremely common for 3 to 5 devs to say, "Yesterday I paired with Sean on whatever." Even if it was only a couple minutes, if I can help get these devs over a hurdle or help unblock them so they can deliver their tickets, then not only do I feel good for helping a fellow dev, but the dev feels good for no longer being stuck, and my name is then mentioned more than anybody else's on the Scrum call. When it comes time for an executive to ask a product manager who should we pull in from engineering to handle this, there's really a good chance that they'll pick me, even if we've never met, simply because they hear my name mentioned all the time. You can absolutely apply this strategy to your own career. Don't practice altruism just to become popular, or then it's not really altruism, and people will see your hidden motives. Help your fellow devs because that's what being a great mentor of the team does. Enjoy the perks later, but do it because it's the right thing to do. That wraps up this module. Keep growing, and I'll see you in the next one.